If you have been betting on oil this year, you have done pretty well. So far, the price of crude up about 30% on the year. Not so good for drivers, though. Prices at the pump have risen 36 cents in the last month alone. And no sign of that abating anytime soon. There is a lot of talk about record high oil prices, why it's a drag on the economy. But we're asking, could it actually be a good thing? Joining us now to talk about just this is Paul Kudrowski. He is a CNBC contributor. He's also a columnist for TheStreet.com. We also have Addison Armstrong. He's also a CNBC contributor and a director of market research at Tradition Energy. And today's guest contributor, Joe Lavorgna, is with us as well. Paul, let me start with you, because every time I do a segment about gas prices or oil prices, I get a whole bunch of emails from people in the audience saying, you know what, I'm so angry about these prices, I've cut way back on my driving. I'm not driving on the weekend. I'm carpooling. Isn't there an upside to high oil prices, or am I just crazy?
Well, all those people aren't on the roads, which makes my commute easier. I like that. Yeah, I mean, there are, and the problem is people sort of get stuck in the prices and miss that. So I'll give you an example. I spent a lot of time on the venture side of things, and there are a lot of projects we're seeing now. Over the last 6 months, we've seen more interesting stuff than we did over the preceding 6 years, and a lot of which is predicated on higher oil prices. You need to have that to make the justification for doing things ranging from, better windows, better distribution technologies, and all those things require higher oil prices to justify the capital expenditure. And if your oil goes back to $50 a barrel, all of a sudden, all of the really interesting stuff we're seeing on the early side of the venture business in clean tech, the justification goes right out the window, literally.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, isn't this a natural economic phenomenon? You see prices go higher and higher, so consumers curb consumption. It's good for the environment. Is there an upside here?
I mean, that's exactly right, Melissa. But the problem is, I don't think there's really an upside in the short term. And we look at this massive rise in energy as well as food as basically being a tax on demand. It will hurt the economy because the environment we're operating in is one where the labor market is weak, income growth is slowing, homeowner equity is declining. This rise in energy, even though we didn't see it in the April retail sales numbers, we think longer term, or at least over the next 6 to 9 months, has to be a factor, Melissa, weighing on sentiment. And that gets me more worried about the economy. So I'm more in the, no, oil isn't really a good thing, it's rising.
Addison, what do you think?
Well, both those points are valid. I would add that, oil, the likelihood of it ever going back to below $60 a barrel is very low because all the new supply projects that we need, because we have dwindling supply in the traditional basins in Saudi Arabia and here in North America, all that new supply that's coming from places like the oil tar in Canada, that all is predicated on oil above $55 a barrel. So in one way, high oil prices at least continues to make supply grow because the high prices allow new technologies and more expensive drilling techniques to bring more product to market.
Interesting. Paul, I mean, we also see this substitution effect, whereas crude oil prices get higher and higher. Right. It makes more sense to substitute for other types of fuel, whether it's hybrid cars or whether we're talking about biofuels.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, all of those require predictably higher prices. And that's a key point because, a lot of people act as if what we really wanted here was oil prices steadily going higher, as if we could have made better plans around it. And that's completely wrong-headed. The trouble with oil prices heading steadily higher in a predictable way is that we move along. We're like sort of in a pot of boiling water, and we don't leave until it's too late. You need the higher spike to change behaviors on the way up. And the worst thing that could happen right now is all of a sudden prices drop precipitously, because what that'll do is scare everyone to death who's making these large investments around alternatives. So in a strange way, predictability is the worst thing that can happen here. We almost need some unpredictability, which is, in a perverse way, OPEC is kind of helping us right now.
Melissa, the thing about these oil prices, though, what worries me, we were talking about this in the earlier segment, is that with these oil prices high, it's not allowing interest rates to come down. So effectively, high oil is negating what normal monetary stimulus would mean for the housing market. So, we've got these high oil prices. It's going to help alternative energy. Certainly environmentally, it'll be good if people consume less fuel. But as long as those high prices keep the markets worried about inflation, housing rates, mortgage rates aren't coming down, and that just means the economy is weaker for a longer period of time.
All right. Interesting discussion. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us.